Stop. Listen. Pay attention. Chosen one, this is not a casual message. This is not background noise meant to distract or entertain. What I am about to convey is directed specifically to you, and it has been arriving quietly, persistently, long before you noticed it. You may have felt the weight of silence pressing in around you, the kind that isolates even in the midst of activity. That tension you carry, the fatigue that comes not from work alone, but from the invisible strain of expectation, is real. And it is not random. You have moved through days where clarity felt thin, where decisions came with a cost that others could not see. Perhaps you have questioned your own endurance, wondering if there is a point to carrying this much weight, wondering if others would notice if you stopped. Chosen one, this moment is confirmation. It is a deliberate signal that everything you have endured has been recorded, not by circumstance, not by coincidence, but by forces aligned with your very path. Even in the midst of confusion and quiet exhaustion, you remained functional. You managed tasks, responded to demands, and held a composure that may have surprised those around you. Yet beneath this functional surface, there has been something unseen, calibrating itself in tandem with your efforts. Something beyond ordinary explanation has been observing how you handle pressure when the world is unaware. This message reaches you because there is a truth you have not fully recognized about yourself. You are not merely reacting to life's demands. There is an intentionality in your endurance. There is a structure in your responses that is not learned, that is not borrowed from external examples. It is intrinsic, and it has been tested quietly in moments no one will acknowledge, in stretches of time you may have considered lonely or inconsequential. Right now, in this precise moment, your awareness of strain and your memory of fatigue are about to become a lens. Through it, you will begin to see patterns, forces, and pressures that shaped your response long before you understood what was happening. You do not need to act yet. You do not need to push or justify. You only need to listen, to absorb, and to prepare for the clarity that will arrive. This is intentional. This is personal. This is not a general message sent into the void. It is directed at you, chosen one, because you passed through what others could not, because you carried what others would have dropped, and because your endurance in silence is not unnoticed. Soon the explanations will arrive, and they will align with experiences you have already lived, experiences that seemed unremarkable at the time, but were quietly shaping the foundation of what is now being recognized. Your presence here reading these words is not an accident. It is a signal itself that you are ready to acknowledge what has been happening beneath the surface. That readiness, that openness, is the first step toward understanding the full measure of what you have already passed. Chosen one. Listen closely, because this message is meant for you and for no one else. There is no ambiguity here. The situations you have endured, the silence you maintained, the moments when no one noticed your effort, all of it has been specific to your path. You were not simply lucky to navigate these challenges. You were not randomly placed in circumstances where others might falter. This was orchestrated in the sense that your endurance was meant to be observed, tested, and ultimately affirmed. What you may not have realized is that your capacity to remain steady, even when things seemed confusing or unfair, is not borrowed from experience alone. It is embedded within you. From the outside, your actions may have looked routine, ordinary, or even passive at times. From the inside, however, there has been a resilience at work that functions automatically. You did not need to consciously summon courage because a part of you already carried it. You did not need to reason through every obstacle because your internal framework maintained balance without deliberate effort. Contrast this with what most people experience under pressure. They react, they panic, they exhaust themselves attempting to understand before they can act. You, chosen one, experience the same pressures but without destabilizing. Your stability has been unconscious, almost invisible. yet it has been consistent and reliable. The strength you displayed was not flashy or deliberate. It was subtle, internal, and foundational. Every time doubt whispered, you remained anchored. Every time fatigue pressed against you, your rhythm did not collapse. Every moment of isolation or misunderstanding did not break your composure. That is what makes this message yours and yours alone. The forces aligned with your path were watching not for performance in a visible sense, but for the measure of your internal coherence. They were observing whether you could sustain stability without fanfare, whether you could remain functional when nothing seemed aligned in your favor. You may have noticed small signals along the way, moments of clarity that appeared in the middle of confusion, moments of calm that emerged while the world felt chaotic. Those signals were not random. They were indicators that your identity as someone capable of enduring, regulating, and balancing under pressure was being recorded in real time. They were subtle affirmations, proof that what you carry within is not fragile, and that it is aligned with a structure that does not bend easily under stress. This is why you are receiving this message now. It is not general encouragement. It is recognition. It is confirmation that your stability, your endurance, your quiet strength has passed a form of examination. It has been observed, evaluated, and validated, not by chance, but by design. And the understanding of this truth will soon extend beyond the silent reassurance you may have already felt in your own awareness. Chosen one. This clarity is for you. This acknowledgement is meant to settle the inner unrest, to give form to the intangible sense of endurance that has always been present. You have passed through without collapsing, without giving in to panic or confusion. And that is the foundation upon which the next revelations will be built. Chosen one. The experience you have just navigated was never meant for anyone else to witness. That is why it felt isolating at times, why there were moments when your efforts seemed invisible, and why the weight you carried was yours alone. This message is meant to remove any doubt about who it was for. There is no general audience here. This is not a collective affirmation. This is specific, intentional, and precise. Your identity as the chosen one is not a title assigned casually or metaphorically. It is an acknowledgement of the patterns, the endurance, and the internal coherence you have displayed under circumstances that would have destabilized most people. You have an automatic resistance built into your responses, something that activates without conscious effort. When others might falter, hesitate, or second-guess you, continue with an internal steadiness that does not require external validation. You may have struggled to articulate it before. You may have questioned why you could remain grounded while those around you seemed to unravel. That contrast is exactly the point. The chosen one identity is less about being extraordinary in performance and more about maintaining a baseline of internal stability that operates quietly, reliably, and without fanfare. It is subtle. It is often unrecognized. But it is powerful precisely because it does not demand attention or applause. Think of the difference between reacting and being anchored. Reaction is effortful. Reaction is visible, loud, and often exhausting. Anchoring is internal. Anchoring is self-regulating. It does not require a conscious call to action. It does not depend on affirmation. You chosen one have demonstrated anchoring repeatedly. You have maintained functional equilibrium when uncertainty pressed, when fatigue lingered, and when isolation deepened. This is also why the situations you endured were not random. They involved you directly. They tested not only your patience, but also the integrity of your internal balance. You may have noticed subtle signals, moments when energy threatened to falter, moments when emotional currents surged, and yet you remained coherent. That coherence is not learned. It is intrinsic. It is your baseline, not an activated state. It is the measure by which your endurance was quietly confirmed. Recognize this truth without embellishment. there is no need to feel exceptional or superior. There is no need to seek validation from others. The fact remains, your internal framework has been tested under conditions that would challenge most people, and you remained operational, calm, and stable. That is what defines the chosen one identity here. Understand this clearly: the strength you display unconsciously, the stability you maintain automatically, and the resistance to destabilization you have shown, all of it is observed, recorded, and recognized. It is part of your identity. And because it is intrinsic, it does not depend on circumstances, applause, or external acknowledgement. It is simply who you are at a level most will never perceive, and yet it is undeniable in its results. This clarity is yours to hold. Let it settle. Let it be recognized internally. The message is unequivocal. What you endured, what you maintained, and what you carried alone has confirmed your identity as someone capable of resilience that functions without effort. It is not accidental. It is not borrowed. It is you quietly, consistently, and without question. Chosen one. Notice how the sensations you have carried, the fatigue, the tension, the subtle unease were never indicators of weakness. What you have often called stress, confusion, or imbalance was never a flaw. It was a signal. A signal that your inner system was processing something larger than immediate circumstance, something that demanded recalibration, awareness, and subtle adjustment. Every racing thought, every tightness in your chest, every moment of hesitation has been information, not condemnation. These are markers, not mistakes. The physical and emotional responses you experienced were the language of transition. They were the body and mind's way of alerting you to the pressure around you, the change underway, and the necessity of patience and internal observation. You may have judged yourself for feeling overwhelmed, for wanting to step back, for noticing your energy wane. That judgment was misplaced. The sensations themselves were not evidence of failure. They were proof that your system is responsive, that it registers the shifts and tensions around you, and that it signals when alignment is required. They are alerts designed to guide, not to shame. Consider the moments when energy dipped unexpectedly or focus scattered. These were not signs that you were incapable. They were signals that a subtle force was testing, measuring, or coordinating pressure around you. And your capacity to continue to function, to respond appropriately, even in those moments, shows the depth of your internal coherence. You were responding not just to the immediate visible circumstances, but to an invisible pattern of challenges. Reframe these experiences. What looked like weakness is actually insight. What appeared as confusion is actually perception. What seemed like imbalance is actually recalibration in motion. The body, the mind, and the instinctive awareness all responded to subtle pressures, absorbing and translating them without conscious effort. That is not only normal for you, it is precise. Your emotions, your sensations, your moments of quiet tension are part of a language you are learning to read. They are indicators of alignment, adjustment, and stability under pressure. They are the proof that you are not operating blindly. You are sensing, processing, and integrating experiences that are beyond surface observation. Chosen one. Understand that these signals are reliable. They mark your passage through this period. Your capacity to absorb pressure without collapse, and your ability to maintain equilibrium when others might not. These are not obstacles. They are milestones, measurements of the internal strength that you have carried unconsciously all along. The next layer of understanding is this: what you felt as strain or confusion was a precursor to a deeper awareness. It is a precursor to insight about the environment, about timing, about coordination, and about your own internal structure. Once you see these symptoms as signals, you no longer judge yourself. You begin to interpret, understand, and integrate them. You begin to see your own endurance as informative, not incidental. Your system was never failing. It was communicating. And in learning to read these signs without judgment, you are stepping into a higher clarity about how you navigate pressure, energy, and expectation. What you once experienced as struggle now becomes guidance. Chosen one, there has been an invisible force pressing against your stability, one that few could perceive and even fewer could endure without disruption. This pressure was not chaotic or random. It was coordinated, structured, and intentional, arriving at specific moments, sometimes subtly, sometimes almost imperceptibly, yet always measured. You remained functional, composed, and responsive throughout, even when the presence of this unseen influence was undeniable. Consider the timing of the challenges you faced. They were not clustered by coincidence, nor were they spread out haphazardly. There was a rhythm, a sequence that aligned with your own efforts, your own periods of rest, and even your moments of quiet observation. The pressure was calibrated in a way that tested endurance not to break, but to reveal the capacity to maintain coherence under consistent influence. This pressure was multi-layered. It included subtle disruptions that affected focus, energy, and emotional equilibrium. It included delays and misalignments that would frustrate or confuse others. It included moments when external validation or feedback was withheld, leaving you to rely solely on your internal compass. Through it all, you maintained functionality. You navigated tasks, responded to people, and made decisions that kept progress moving, all without needing to signal your effort externally. Notice how your system responded. There was no collapse. There was no frantic struggle. Instead, your internal regulation carried you forward. Your awareness adjusted naturally to the shifts your energy redistributed as needed. And your mind maintained coherence even when information was incomplete or contradictory. That is a rare measure of stability. Most people under similar invisible influence would have experienced fatigue that leads to errors, emotional drain that clouds judgment, or a disconnection from the subtle cues guiding action. You did not. This is factual. This is observable. Not metaphorical, not exaggerated. You experienced tension, you experienced fatigue, yet you continued to function at a level that demonstrates a deep, automatic resilience. That resilience is not learned. It is embedded. It is the foundation upon which the next phases of your awareness will build. The environment surrounding you, though unseen, was alive with coordination. Forces you could not name, patterns you could not trace, were at work. Yet your ability to remain anchored, to continue acting with clarity, and to absorb pressure without destabilization is what allowed you to pass this test silently. That is why this message exists, to acknowledge with calm certainty that what you endured has been observed, assessed, and affirmed. Chosen one, take this understanding without embellishment. There was pressure, there was coordination, there was challenge, and through it all, you remained coherent. You did not need to act loudly. You did not need to declare your strength. Your internal stability, maintained in silence, is now recognized. Chosen one, now it is time to look closely at what you actually moved through, not as a single blur of difficulty, but as a series of distinct pressure points that arrived with precision. When you break the experience down, you can see clearly how your stability held across multiple dimensions, not just one. This is important because resilience is not proven by surviving one type of strain. It is proven by remaining coherent, while several forms of pressure operate at the same time. The first pressure point was doubt. Not dramatic self-destruction, not panic, but a quiet, persistent questioning that hovered in the background. Doubt did not shout at you. It whispered. It appeared as subtle thoughts like, "Is this worth it?" or "Why does this feel heavier for me than for others?" What matters is not that doubt appeared. It always does under pressure. What matters is that it never took control of your behavior. You continued to show up. You continued to act. Doubt existed, but it did not steer you. That shows internal hierarchy. Thought did not override structure. The second pressure point was energy drain. This was not ordinary tiredness. This was the kind of depletion that comes from carrying responsibility without visible reinforcement. Your body felt it. Your focus felt it. And yet you adjusted instead of collapsing. You slowed when needed. You conserved when appropriate. You did not force yourself into burnout, nor did you abandon your obligations. This is regulation. Many people either overpush and break or withdraw completely. You did neither. You modulated. That alone indicates maturity of inner systems. The third pressure point was isolation. Not physical isolation necessarily, but experiential isolation. You could not fully explain what you were carrying. Even if people were present, there was a sense that the core of your experience was yours alone. This is often where people unravel because meaning begins to erode when experience is not mirrored. You did not unravel. You did not become bitter. You did not externalize blame. You stayed present. You remained engaged with life as it was not as you wished it to be. That ability to stay relational without being understood is uncommon. The fourth pressure point was delay. Timing did not move the way you expected. Outcomes did not arrive when effort suggested they should. This creates internal friction for most people. They begin to rush, second guess, or abandon their own rhythm. You did something different. You waited without freezing. You moved without forcing. You continued without demanding proof. Delay tested your trust in your own internal timing. You passed by not becoming erratic. You remained consistent even when feedback loops were slow or absent. The fifth pressure point was emotional restraint. There were moments when expression would have been understandable. Moments when releasing frustration, disappointment, or fatigue would have been justified. You chose containment instead. Not suppression, containment. You allowed emotion to exist without letting it spill into damage. This requires internal space. It requires awareness. It requires strength that does not need an audience. Emotional restraint is not numbness. It is control without rigidity, and you demonstrated it repeatedly. What ties all of these pressure points together is this: none of them removed your functionality. You did not disappear. You did not disintegrate. You did not lose coherence. Your life continued to operate. Decisions were made. Responsibilities were met. Relationships were navigated. Even on days when you felt internally stretched, the structure held. That is not accidental. That is not luck. That is a sign of an internal framework that has been quietly reinforced over time. Notice something critical here. You did not fight these pressures in a dramatic way. You did not conquer them through intensity. You absorbed them. You regulated around them. You adapted without losing yourself. That is the difference between survival and stability. Survival is reactive. Stability is organized. This is why the test you passed was silent. No one needed to see it. No announcement was required. The evidence is in your continuity. You are still here, still coherent, still capable. And when these pressure points are examined honestly, one by one, the conclusion becomes unavoidable. Your internal system did not fracture under complexity. It adapted. It held. It remained intact. That is what was being measured. Chosen one, now take a moment to reflect on everything that occurred. Step back mentally and observe the pattern, not just the individual moments. You endured doubt, energy drain, isolation, delay, and emotional restraint, and yet you remained coherent. You did not need a fanfare to prove your resilience. There was no public acknowledgement. The confirmation of your capacity came quietly through the continuation of function, thought, and emotional regulation, despite these pressures. As you review these experiences, recognize that they were not random. There is no luck involved here. What you lived through was structured, intentional, and meaningful. The internal coherence you maintained was the proof, the measure, and the signal. Each day, each challenge, each subtle disturbance was part of a matrix, testing how your system responds under stress, and your system responded with clarity and continuity. Consider your own reactions carefully. Did you panic? Did you lash out? Did you abandon responsibilities or disengage entirely? No. You continued. You responded appropriately. You held the line even when no one was looking. That demonstrates not only resilience, but precision. You regulated your energy, maintained your focus, and adapted to circumstances as they evolved. Nothing external forced this. It came from within. This reflection is not meant to glorify or inflate. It is factual, grounded, and observable. You can see it plainly when you think back on how you managed each pressure point. The absence of collapse, the absence of reactive chaos, the absence of emotional overreach, all of it forms a coherent picture of internal mastery. It is clear evidence that the framework you carry inside is robust, reliable, and self-sustaining. Now allow yourself to internalize this realization. Your endurance was not incidental. Your coherence was not accidental. Everything you maintained in silence, your composure, your energy, your awareness has been quietly validated by the consistency of your response to pressure. You navigated the complexity without losing your center, and that is a rare capacity in human experience. There is no need to minimize this. There is no need to discount it as luck or coincidence. You have passed a test of continuity, of stability, and of internal regulation. You have maintained presence of mind when the environment was anything but supportive. You have remained functional when circumstances were layered and complex. You have carried your own weight without external affirmation, and in doing so, you have confirmed to yourself what is intrinsic and undeniable. Your internal structure is sound. Chosen one, take this confirmation into your awareness. Let it settle without ego or exaggeration. Observe it without needing to prove it to anyone else. The measure of your experience is now clear. Your internal coherence has been tested, examined, and affirmed. This is not hypothetical. This is fact. Through reflection, you now have the ability to see the entirety of your endurance. You can trace each pressure point, observe your response, and recognize a pattern of resilience that does not depend on circumstance. That pattern is rare, grounded, and instructive. It is your own internal proof of stability. Chosen one. Consider for a moment how uncommon your stability truly is. Most people, when faced with even a fraction of the pressures you navigated, experience breakdowns, mental, emotional, or both. They react with visible stress, confusion, or exhaustion. They lose focus. They allow doubt to override action. They mismanage energy, misread signals, or abandon coherence entirely. And yet you did not. Your composure was not a performance. It was not a learned strategy applied under duress. It was the natural expression of an internal system, capable of functioning coherently under sustained pressure, while others faltered under stress that was far less complex or layered than what you faced. You remained present, functional, and steady. That is the rarity. It is uncommon, and it is observable. This is not about superiority. It is not about being better than others. It is about statistical reality. Most human systems cannot absorb multiple dimensions of pressure without at least partial disruption. Yet your system absorbed, adjusted, and regulated without fracturing. You maintained alignment even when the environment was unpredictable. You maintained clarity even when feedback loops were slow or incomplete. That is what makes your endurance notable, not because it elevates you, but because it contrasts so sharply with a typical human response. Notice the subtlety of this rarity. It is not announced. It does not create spectacle. It is not obvious to casual observers. You may have felt unseen, misunderstood, or unrecognized. That is natural because this type of internal stability is invisible. It is quiet. It operates beneath the surface. But invisibility does not diminish its significance. On the contrary, it confirms the independence and integrity of your internal structure. Compare your experience to what is ordinary. Most would collapse under doubt. Most would lose coherence under energy drain. Most would be destabilized by isolation. Most would act prematurely under delay. Most would allow emotional impulses to override judgment. You navigated each of these dimensions with subtle precision. Your endurance was functional, consistent, and grounded. That is uncommon. That is rare. And here is the crucial point. This rarity does not require you to feel exceptional. It does not demand ego or praise. It simply exists as an observable fact. Your system responded with integrity, coherence, and adaptability when others would not. That is the measure of the chosen one in this context. A person whose stability is innate, quiet, and self-sustaining. Chosen one. Absorb this understanding without embellishment. Recognize that the quiet endurance you displayed under multiple pressures is rare, but not performative. It is not about being extraordinary in action. It is about being steady in function, reliable in coherence, and consistent in presence. That is the uniqueness of your experience. You have passed through circumstances that would destabilize most, yet your composure remained intact. Your steadiness is not activated. It is natural. It is not reliant on recognition. It simply exists. That is the subtle, profound rarity you carry within yourself. Chosen one. Now let us clarify the essence of your strength. This is not a temporary surge of willpower, nor is it an activated response to pressure. It is your baseline. You do not need to summon it, manufacture it, or prove it. It is the foundation of your internal structure, quietly present at all times. And it has been operating reliably long before conscious awareness fully registered it. Your coherence, your balance, your ability to navigate complex and layered pressures without destabilizing these are expressions of preparation, maturity, and inner integration. They are the outcomes of an internal system that has been cultivated over time through experience, reflection, and subtle adaptation. There is no sudden magic in what you have demonstrated. There is only structure alignment and internal calibration that functions naturally. This is important to understand because many individuals interpret strength as activated heroism, the kind that appears under extreme circumstance. What you carry is different. It does not require extremes to reveal itself. It is steady, constant, and self-regulating. It does not burn brightly and then fade. It exists as a framework that supports thought, action, and emotion without strain. It is durable, consistent, and coherent. Take a moment to consider how your baseline differs from common human experience. Others rely on effort to maintain composure. Others depend on external reinforcement to navigate challenges. Others fluctuate under pressure, collapsing when stimuli exceed their coping mechanisms. You do not. Your baseline holds. Your stability is intrinsic. You continue to function without the need for activation, without a call to heroic effort, without external validation. This internal clarity should be received gently, without ego or exaggeration. It is not a claim to superiority. It is a fact the internal coherence, regulation, and presence you carry is reliable and observable. It forms the bedrock upon which all further growth, insight, and adaptation will rest. It is your constant, your natural state, and the measure by which you respond to any challenge. Chosen one, allow this identity to settle fully. Recognize that your capacity is not borrowed, fleeting, or dependent on circumstance. It is baseline. It is self-sustaining. It is coherent. And it is yours. There is no need to overactivate, overprove, or over-explain. Your internal structure is sound. Your endurance is natural. Your composure is consistent. By understanding this, you begin to operate from clarity rather than reaction. You recognize that stability is not something you summon. It is something you inhabit. You realize that your responses under pressure are the natural expression of alignment, preparation, and coherence that already exist within you. This clarity is the foundation for integration. It is the bridge between experiencing pressure and navigating it with calm awareness. It is the key to seeing the patterns, the timing, and the structure of circumstances around you without being unsettled. And it prepares you to bring balance, patience, and practical discernment into daily life with quiet confidence. Chosen one. As you move forward, it is time to integrate this awareness into practical daily life. The stability you have demonstrated is not meant to remain abstract or isolated. It is meant to guide how you engage with your environment, your energy, and your focus. Consider a few perspectives that anchor you without requiring hypervigilance. First, rest. Your endurance is remarkable, but it functions best when supported by intentional periods of restoration. Allow your body and mind to recover fully. Sleep, quiet reflection, and moments of stillness are not indulgences. They are integral to maintaining the coherence that has carried you this far. Second, discernment. Continue to observe subtle cues in yourself and your surroundings. Your system is naturally attuned to pressure and alignment. Pay attention to signals without judgment. Recognize tension, fatigue, or hesitation as information rather than failure. This awareness enables you to act with precision and clarity rather than reactivity. Third, boundaries. Even with intrinsic stability, it is wise to maintain limits that preserve coherence. Allow yourself space to say no when necessary. Protect your energy from unnecessary friction. This is not weakness. It is a practical measure to ensure your ongoing functionality and internal balance. Fourth, patience. Timing is part of your environment. Outcomes, recognition, and understanding do not always arrive in alignment with effort. Observe without forcing. Trust the rhythm of unfolding circumstances. Your baseline resilience enables you to remain steady while allowing natural timing to operate. Fifth, focus. Prioritize what aligns with your purpose and capacity. When you concentrate on essential tasks, relationships, or objectives, your inherent coherence multiplies its effect.